It was supposed to be just another test day. Low fuel runs, race simulations, data gathering. But what we saw in Barcelona today wasn't preparation. It was a warning. One team, without fanfare, without pushing, just changed the tone of the entire paddock. At first, it didn't register. The timing sheets looked normal. Some purple sectors, a few green flags, nothing out of place. But the engineers noticed it. The trackside analysts picked it up. And by the third hour, every garage had turned their screens toward the same live feed. Because what Ferrari did this morning, what McLaren answered in the afternoon, and what Aston Martin hinted at, almost in secret, wasn't about setup. It was about potential. Unreleased. Controlled. A monster doesn't roar at first sight. It watches. It waits. And when it moves, it doesn't need to explain itself. That's what this car did. Not the fastest time. Not the longest run. But the clearest message. Someone is already ahead. And not by chance. By design. The final day of testing was never supposed to be about revelations. By this point, teams usually go into lockdown. Running race simulations, hiding data, masking fuel loads. But Barcelona didn't end quietly. It ended with a pattern shift. And for those watching closely, it didn't feel like the end of testing. It felt like the start of something else. Ferrari came out swinging. Not by surprise, but by decision. Their car, the SF26, had already shown pace. But on day 5, they removed the ambiguity. Low fuel, soft compound, clean air. It wasn't a race sim. It was a shot across the bow. Charles Leclerc didn't just go fast. He made it look predictable. As if the car was finally matching the theory. And when the time dropped into the 1:16s, the engineers didn't flinch. They nodded. Because that wasn't a glory run. It was confirmation. Behind them, McLaren quietly did something even more subtle. Oscar Piastri wasn't chasing purple sectors. He was chasing mileage. And he got it. After a disrupted day 4, their afternoon session was calm, methodical, uninterrupted. 79 laps with no visible degradation. No liftoff. No unexplained drop in pace. That kind of consistency doesn't make headlines. But inside a debrief room, it's gold. And then, Red Bull arrived. Verstappen, who had missed 2 full days, finally got a proper session. Not flashy. Not even competitive at face value. But the message was clear. We're still here. And we're not chasing anyone. Then, as the sun dipped behind the main grandstand, Alonso took the AMR26 onto the track. It didn't top the charts. It didn't break any sectors. But for the 4th time this week, it didn't struggle. And for a car this radical, with a concept so extreme, the absence of failure is a statement in itself. Because when a car with this much risk runs cleanly across 5 test days, the risk might already be paying off. It wasn't the lap times that changed the mood. It was the way those laps were done. When Ferrari dropped into the low 1:16s, it wasn't just about speed, it was about confidence. Leclerc never overcorrected. The SF26 didn't snap under pressure. And the telemetry showed a line so clean, it looked like something drawn by simulation software. But that's not what really got people talking. What triggered the shift was how quickly other teams stopped pushing. As soon as Ferrari laid down their marker, everyone else backed off. Red Bull switched to heavy fuel. McLaren started aero mapping. Even Mercedes, who had been hovering near the top 3, suddenly went quiet. And that's where the suspicion started. Because backing off like that, in the middle of the most competitive testing day, isn't normal. It suggests something else was learned. Something that changed the priorities. Maybe it wasn't Ferrari's time that mattered. Maybe it was what the GPS data showed about how they got there. Because through turn 3, through turn 9, the SF26 held speeds the others weren't matching. Not on fresh tires. Not on low fuel. Not even on clean air runs. And that's when people started asking, how much of that performance is mechanical? And how much of it is something new? What started as confidence began to look more like strategy. Ferrari wasn't just fast. They were deliberate. The choice to run that lap, on that tire, in that window, wasn't random. And the timing? It forced every team to react without looking like they were reacting. But the twist isn't that Ferrari was ahead. It's that no one tried to match them. Red Bull, by all logic, should have responded. They had Verstappen in the car, soft tires ready, and more than enough track time to go for a number. But they didn't. Instead, they shut the car down early, reported no issues, said it was all part of the plan. Except, that's exactly what they said last year, when they were already a second clear of the field. And that's why this time, it doesn't add up. Because Red Bull doesn't play mind games with themselves. If they had more to show, they would have shown it. So now, Two possibilities sit in front of the paddock. Either Red Bull has found something they don't want anyone to see yet, or they've seen something in Ferrari's data they didn't expect. And the quietest one in all of this? Aston Martin. The AMR26 hasn't set a headline lap. It hasn't revealed its true performance window. But insiders are starting to believe it might not have to. Because if Ferrari is the new benchmark, and Red Bull has already started playing defense, then maybe the scariest car on the grid is still holding back. No technical directive has been issued. No statement from the FIA. Not even a clarification email to the teams. But the data from day 5 has already sparked internal meetings. Because while the public timing sheets tell one story, the telemetry shared privately among teams tells another. One that points to something inconsistent. The Ferrari SF26 seems to be loading the rear axle earlier than expected. It's not illegal. It's not even irregular. But the question is, how? The Red Bull doesn't behave that way. The Mercedes isn't rotating the same way mid-corner. Even the McLaren, efficient as it looks, shows a delay in load transfer that Ferrari seems to avoid entirely. And that's where the theories begin. Not with accusations, but with confusion. Because if the SF26 is achieving that rotation through passive means, then it has geometry the others haven't discovered. If it's using airflow, then it's doing so with a level of floor control that bypasses current simulation models. And if it's doing both, then Ferrari may have pulled off something that's been missing from their cars for nearly a decade. But no one wants to say that yet. Because the moment someone suggests Ferrari found a concept-defining advantage, the scrutiny begins. The FIA doesn't want another 2019. The paddock doesn't want to admit they've been out-engineered. And Ferrari doesn't want attention, not until they know if it's stable. So, the silence continues. But behind every vague radio message, every sudden tire change, every early session end, there's one quiet admission. Someone knows more than they're letting on. There are no protest forms being filed. No press conferences calling out regulations. And yet, back in the factories, development plans are already changing. Ferrari's final day performance wasn't just fast. It was repeatable. And that's the part worrying their rivals. Because one lucky lap on low fuel can be dismissed. But multiple stints, across different conditions, all showing the same behavior? That becomes a model to chase. McLaren, for instance, ended the test with quiet optimism. But overnight, sources suggest they've already asked their CFD team to reevaluate floor edge flow across 3 separate ride height profiles. Why? Because Ferrari's car didn't pitch like the others. It floated. And if that stability comes from passive downforce management, something baked into the shape rather than the electronics, then reverse engineering has already begun. At Red Bull, the mood is harder to read. They're not panicking. But they're not leading either. And for a team that has dictated car philosophy for 3 straight seasons, being forced to observe instead of define the direction, that's unfamiliar territory. Mercedes, meanwhile, is in a more fragile position. Their day 5 long runs showed promise, but they lacked the same high-speed rotation that Ferrari and McLaren displayed. And with just days before Bahrain, that could force them to lock in a compromised setup. One not optimized for the car they thought they'd be chasing. Because the threat isn't just Ferrari being fast. It's Ferrari being fast this early. It narrows the development window. It shifts the performance baseline. And worst of all, it forces top teams to react, rather than evolve. The checkered flag came down. Engines powered off. Teams began packing up, slowly, carefully. But no one left satisfied. Not because something went wrong, but because something didn't add up. The data was there. The cameras captured every lap. The media briefings came and went. But no one could explain, clearly, confidently, what had actually changed between day 1 and day 5. There were no blown engines. No major upgrades. No wild innovations that anyone could point to. And yet, the hierarchy shifted. Ferrari, once assumed to be 2 steps behind, suddenly looks like a genuine contender. McLaren, expected to struggle with reliability, ends testing with a stronger race profile than expected. And Red Bull, despite never showing their hand, seemed to hold back a little more than usual. Was it control? Or was it caution? The AMR26 remains the wild card. It hasn't led a session. It hasn't run at full speed. But inside the paddock, there's a growing suspicion that Aston Martin might be sitting on something they haven't fully unwrapped yet. Because when Alonso climbs out of the car with zero concern, after a week of holding back, you don't need lap times to feel the confidence. So now, with testing over and Bahrain around the corner, the question isn't who's fastest. It's who's hiding what. And in Formula 1, the biggest threat is often the one you haven't seen yet.